Sound good, everyone? Okay. Well, welcome. Team International at Carney Sandoe is thrilled to be able to welcome you to our webinar series, Aspire for Greatness. This session, Making the Leap, Driven, Successful, and Ready, is being brought to you by us. There will be 3 of us who are featured on this webinar, but the team of 6 is in front of you. We'd like to take a few minutes for each of us to introduce ourselves, because the other 3 will be featured in a webinar on March 15th that we'll talk more about at the end of the session. I'm Deb Welch. I'm a senior consultant for Carney Sandoe and a former deputy head at International School Bangkok, as well as head of school at American School of Doha and CEO for the Academy for International School Heads. And now I'm happy to be able to be a part of the Carney Sandoe team. Karen.
Hi, everyone. I'm an alum of the International School of Brussels, and I've worked both in independent and public schools in California, Oregon, and Hawaii. In my last post, my last 2 posts, Archer School for Girls in Los Angeles, where I was the assistant head and associate head of school at Iolani School on Oahu. I joined Carney Sandoe in 2018, and I'm going to pass it off to G.
Hello, everyone. Welcome. My name is Ji Han, and I'm delighted to be part of this amazing Team International Carney Sandoe team. I have been with Carney for just under a year, and before that, I had the privilege of serving as a senior leader in international schools, and most recently at an independent school in the United States. So it's a delight to be here with you today. On to you, John.
Good morning, everybody. I'm John Chandler, and I'm not presenting today, but will be in a couple of weeks. I've been with Carney Sandoe now. This is my 11th year, having been head of schools in Turkey and in Massachusetts prior to that. Art?
Art Charles, pleased to meet you all. I've worked in 5 international schools in Switzerland, Ecuador, Bulgaria, India, and most recently in Lebanon. This is my 15th year with Carney Sandoe. I've done 165 senior admin searches. Theodora.
Good morning, everybody. Calling in from Boston with greetings for you all. My name is Theodora Konetsovska, originally from Bulgaria, and the school that Art mentioned there is the one that got us together. This is my first year at Carney Sandoe. Before that, I had plenty of experience with corporate recruiting as well as financial management in various educational institutions. Thanks for your time this morning.
Great. Thank you, team. So, making the leap, driven, successful, and ready. We have a 30-minute presentation for you today. Please know that we do have slides and that after the session, these slides will be mailed to you. So know that you don't have to feel in a panic to try to get all of the content down. Also know after the 30 minutes, we will be doing a Q&A. Some questions were already submitted to Julie Landis, who is our wing woman today with Carney Sandoe, and is handling the poll that we'll be doing and the questions. But other questions that may emerge throughout the session, if you stay on after the 30 minutes, we'll be more than happy to take them. So as we take a look at our topic today, as an aspiring head of an international school, we well understand that it can feel daunting to develop your resume and to prepare for interviews, because you are in a competitive field with standing heads of school. If you are seeking a headship, really, in a sense, your preparation needs to be different than it has been for any other position that you have sought, because the position itself is different. In a sense, you must convince a governing body, be they a board or founders or a corporate entity, that you have the experience and the skills to be the right leader to move the school forward. We want you to remember, however, that every sitting head of school was herself or himself once in your shoes as an aspiring head. It can be done, and the team that is on the screen has coached literally hundreds of people to get their first headship position. And in fact, in many cases, we realize that this perceived weakness of never having been a head of school can actually be turned into a strength, because your enthusiasm, your hunger, your desire for the job can be so compelling to a search committee that they really want to hire such a go-getter who they know will be so committed. So the task at hand is that you must provide evidence to the board and the search committee that you have the experience and the skills to move their school forward. We'll offer you some of the insights that the 6 of us have gleaned throughout the years when we have seen people move into those headship positions. What is it that they have done that has been so convincing to a governing body? These tips will enable you to be proactive and anticipate what a search committee will be asking and looking for. So what then are the skills? What is the knowledge that is needed in order to move into a headship? Well, fortunately, we have good research that has been done. The Academy for International School Heads, or AISH, an organization of heads and by heads, compiled research that was international in terms of the roles and responsibilities of the job, as well as interviewed literally hundreds of international school heads to come up with a list of standards. We're going to show you the 6 broad areas. And as you see these 6 leadership areas, we're going to be asking you to think about your experience in each of the areas. Know that after we explain each one, we will be doing a short poll, and we'll be asking each of you, looking at that area, to say to yourself, is this a soft spot? Is this an area where I've got some knowledge and expertise, but I need some more development? Or is this an area that you would consider to be a strength, where your years of experience and leadership have really prepared you well in this particular area, and that's something that you want to make sure and make the most of? So let's take a look at the areas then. You can see on the left, the 6 areas are listed in teal, and in the right, we've added some details so that each area, in a sense, comes to life a bit more. So mission for learning is the area that many of us as educators for many years feel very confident about. And the standard in this area encompasses a coherent curriculum, using as a leader data-based actions to see where the school is, where different programs are, and always keeping our eye on student progress as the core of what school and education and leadership is all about. The second area is governance. So that ability to set a partnership with the board, where you work together, where there's a great deal of reciprocity, and you set the strategic direction of the school, where there's clarity around roles and responsibilities, and work is done at a strategic and generative level. Thirdly is the area of human development and organizational development. So here we see the areas related to recruitment, development, retention of faculty and staff. We also see setting up a school organizationally in terms of the structures that enable people to work well, to collaborate, to be focused on the mission of the school. Operations and resource management is the 4th area. And in a sense, it's the business side of the house. It's a vast area when you actually read everything that's underneath the standards, because it has to do not only with finances, but with facilities. We know many schools, for example, are under construction projects. It has to do with admissions and enrollment management. It has to do with fundraising. It has to do with risk management, child protection efforts, and the infrastructure. And here, many times it's the technology infrastructure that enables really the mission to be accomplished. The fifth basket, if you will, is that big area of homeschool community partnerships, the ability to have an inclusive environment and invite the community in, to have those good relationships with parents, and also for the school not to be perceived as an island. And finally, professional accountability has to do with us as leaders. The modeling of the values of the school that we do, the personal integrity that we have around those, and our ability to indeed lead, to self-reflect, to keep balance in our lives, to look at wellness across the entire school as well as within ourselves, and to truly empower others to be leaders within the school. So as you think about your experience in these areas, reflect upon your current position and previous positions. What have your responsibilities been that align with the ACE standards? For example, are you involved with professional development, with recruitment? Do you lead faculty meetings? Do you have a budget to monitor? Do you liaise with a parent-teacher organization? Perhaps write newsletters for your division? Have you been able to serve on a board committee? Well, let's do a quick poll then of the people in our webinar. And in the 6 areas, which ones would you say are your strengths? Which ones are your soft spots? Now, this is a forced choice. Okay, you might want to put a percentage in, but just very quickly, is mission for learning a soft area for you, or might you consider it strong? We'll take a couple of minutes for you to be able to complete the poll.
You also need to scroll down. There's actually 6 areas, so we can only see, a few on the screen.
I'm sure everybody knows this, but it's anonymous. We're not recording your answers to use them against you later.
I love the dynamic nature of this, where you can see the polls completed as we talk. Okay, we'll give it the last 30 seconds.
Wow.
Great, let's see where we are. So we'll start with mission for learning. 90% of the people in the room say that that's a strong area, 10% soft. We see this typically as the strongest area among our applicants, but we also have applicants for the headship that have a business background or come from a CFO or an enrollment management position. And those applicants tend to be softer in mission for learning. Governance, strong 43, soft 57. So the majority of the group, although not resoundingly so, would say that's a soft area. Human and organizational development, 17% soft. Let's scroll down and see then. Let's see, Julie, can we, oh, there, we can do it. Okay, and 83% strong. So a strong group, second to mission for learning in the group. Operations and resource management, 63% soft, 37% strong. Okay, so majority of the group feels this is a soft area. School home community relations, strong 80%, soft 20%. Professional accountability, 93% strong, 7% soft. So team, based upon this quick poll, with the folks who are in the room, any observations?
So it looks like as we're looking at the poll that operations and resource management is the one area that stands out as being an area of consideration for maybe development in this group. And that is not uncommon as senior leaders, especially if you're working as in a principal or a division specific role, you're often focusing on those other aspects. And so that is something that's definitely stand out. And we're excited, and as we predicted, to see that the strength of our group here does focus on learning and accountability and home partnerships. So
Right. So operations and resource management, then followed by governance as the softest area, mission for learning and human and organizational development, school community relations, and professional accountability strong, which is a good sign, actually, because what we want to do now is we want to then take first the strong areas and say how to make the most of those. You know, you can have that strength, but do you truly show it, provide evidence for it? And then we want to go to the soft areas. Great. So we will go with the strong areas. G, take us away.
All right. So yeah, first we're going to talk about strengths. I think that's important. We're often living in a world where we're thinking of growth and development, but when we're looking for a headship, it's really important in our experience to spotlight your strengths. And one of the most effective ways of doing this is by emphasizing those accomplishments that you've already done. We want to remind you to think that you have indeed really been successful. Otherwise, you wouldn't be where you are and you wouldn't be here today. So many times in a resume, we see people list just their job roles or their responsibilities. And remember, if the goal is to help board members or your potential employers to believe that you can do the job, as an alternative, they really need to be able to see those achievements, those successes that you've been able to accomplish. And the idea is that to highlight those instead of linking just your specific tasks. We also invite you to talk about the successful ways that you've managed challenges or opportunities that you've seized or a problem that you might have solved. Currently in this post-pandemic, we often talk about people navigating their way through that pandemic trauma or drama. And we also think that it's so important for you to share the results of your efforts. And that can be either in quality or quantity as well. Don't be afraid to share a quote that you heard a mentor or from an accreditation report. Be willing to put out data from a statistical survey that you've had in a perception survey or something that you've done to increase enrollment. To be able to show concrete examples of your success is going to be really important because remember, research shows that boards believe if you've done it once before, in whatever context, even if it's not as a head, you're going to be able to repeat it. And they would like to be fairly confident that you're going to be able to do the things that they want you to do. So if you look at this table, Julie, I'm going to ask you to show the second slide. If you look at this table, you'll see that you often will see in resumes things on the left-hand column. So these are what we call responsibility or roles, which we see very often and very likely are part of your daily bread. But really what you want to do is highlight that accomplishment. You want to be able to show what you've done in a concrete way, as you see, to instead of saying you're just a member of a senior leadership team, you're going to say what you've done. You're facilitating, you've done strategic planning, you've worked in a K through 8 or a K through 12 context. Again, the accomplishments on the right, even though they seem much more detailed, in fact they are, that will help the the search committee understand what your skills are and what your accomplishments are. So have a look at this. If your resume is already looking like the column on the right, then that's already fantastic. Then what you need to do in the interview phase is bring those accomplishments out. A lot of people really only stop on the left side, and we really, at the very first point, which is your resume, which is your calling card, to be able to think, is my resume also showing my accomplishments? Research shows that, remember, previous actions dictate future success. So remember, the goal is to help board members to see that there is a match between your strengths, your accomplishments, your past achievements to the desired qualities and the challenges that their community is going to face. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Karen, who's going to talk a little bit about the soft F spots and what you can do about that.
Great. So you want to make sure that you cover all of those 6 areas that Deb shared earlier. And I'm going to ask Julie to share the next slide. I'm going to move a little more quickly because I noticed we're running out of time. And I want to get to another section here. So this is just the same thing G talked about, right? Repackaging your responsibilities, particularly in those soft areas where people wanted, I don't remember the numbers now, but there were more people on governance and human organizational development. And these first 2 really address those 2 areas. And then Julie, could you go to the next slide, please? Yes. And so some of you may have experience in those 6 areas Deb mentioned earlier, but some of you may not, and you may think, okay, what am I going to do now that I don't have experience in those areas? So we pulled 50 former and sitting school heads and got information on each of those 6 areas. And I'm not going to talk through them because we have a second slide and then we want to be able to answer any questions. So on that first slide, if Julie can go back 1, if possible, you can see if governance was a softer spot for you, these are ways you can get that experience. And human organizational development, again, these are ways you get that experience. And as Deb mentioned before, we're going to share these slides with you, but I really want to make sure we have time to answer a few questions. So G, I'm going to turn over the next slide to you. If you want to highlight any of those things.
Yeah, I think you can read these strategies, but what I think the theme here is that you really need to be proactive. You know, you need to volunteer, to ask to do things that might not necessarily be in your current job responsibility. Volunteer to work with the development office, volunteer to support or shadow the director of finance. I think putting yourself out there and putting yourself in a situation where you are actually kind of putting your hands in or being in that environment is really important. So proactive and really being a little bit assertive in the things that you are playing around with. Yeah. All right. We're going to finish.
So we'll pull it together
done.
then. Thank you, G. We'll pull it together so that we have enough time to take some questions, but let's just, let's summarize what we've said. First of all, we encourage you, if you are an aspiring head, and in fact, if you are a sitting head, we encourage you to self-assess according to skills and leadership experiences needed for the headship. ACE provides us with an authoritative document that does that. We provided the web address for ACE. Know that it is open source so that you can take a look at it, do that self-assessment, self-assess your resume and how you prepare so that you can proactively anticipate the areas that a board is going to be looking for. Then making note of your strengths, repackaging the responsibilities into accomplishments, and for your soft areas, capturing your experiences, stressing what you have done, and then seeking a variety of new experiences, be they, as you saw the list, professional development, coaching, mentors, things to help you promote your continued growth as a leader so that those soft spots turn into strengths. And know that we, all 6 of us, are dedicated for you to be able to do it. We believe that you can do it. We've placed our email addresses here at the bottom so that you can contact the 3 of us as well as the 6 of us, because we know you can do it. We've seen it happen literally hundreds of times. And with that, we would be happy to take any questions. We'll let Julie coordinate that for us. Thank you, Julie.
Of course, I do have a question that came in advance of our webinar today, and that relates to any advice you have for women who are looking to attain their first headship. Any specific advice for women?
Thank you, Julie. The Academy for International School Heads actually has done research on this, and it's been fascinating to take a look at that research. For 10 years, the statistic was a very stable 1/3 of the international school headships were women. Up until 2 years ago. And 2 years ago, that statistic started to be higher than 33%. And we actually find at Carney Sandoe that our statistic in terms of number of women who have been employed in the past few years into headships is actually higher than 50%. So that's a strong testimony to the fact that you can do it. And it's a strong testimony to the fact that we encourage you to seek out those networks, those collaboratives, those mentors and coaches who believe in you and help you gain some of those experiences that were on those 2 slides relative to the 6 areas. So seeking the classes, getting the mentors, talking to people about areas where you want to grow and what your aspirations are. We find the environment to be much more supportive towards women gaining headships. So be encouraged about that. The stats are definitely going up, and at Carney Sandoe, we want to help you with that.
Thanks, Deb. I have another question from the group. Do you have an idea of the average number of applicants for each opening of a headship?
We'll open that up to anyone in our group.
I would just say that it varies greatly depending on location of the school, type of school, right? Whether they're a DP or American-based curriculum. So it's a very wide range. Any of the consultants that you work with who might have a search could certainly give you a sense of the depth of the pool. Maybe not exact numbers, but could tell you a bit more about the makeup of that pool.
Mm-hmm.
I think one trend we are seeing is our mind thinks that headships are often determined well in advance, and we still do have schools who are trying to find headships, a year or a year and a half out. But we're also noticing that those positions are coming up in the shorter term much quicker. So a headship pops up in a shorter term, in a shorter recruiting cycle. And this might be also a wonderful opportunity for people who are thinking about it, but hadn't really considered it in a longer term. So keep your eyes open, I think. One of the things that our wise friend Art Charles says is that you can't get a headship if you don't try for one. So, putting yourself out there and, trying and, maybe not being successful. We know that failure is a really good master and a teacher. So it might not be the first time or second time. I think we've had candidates who've tried more than 10 times, if not even more than that, before they were successful. So, being, staying, knowing that you have a lot of people behind you, trying to help, and being persistent and continuing to believe that you can do it, because many, many schools will continue to need good, reliable, competent, caring heads.
I want to follow on something Karen said, and also really what she said too. It's absolutely correct that there are some schools, some parts of the world that are going to draw more candidates. It's inevitable. Western Europe looks lovely. But the reality is that there are wonderful opportunities everywhere, and it is something of a constantly shifting scene. But more to the point, what you really need to be looking for is what the school says it is looking for, and aligning yourself with and your strengths with that profile. And I think that particularly for somebody looking for a first headship, the best thing you can do is look. You'll hear it every time you talk to a consultant, but look for the best fit. And you're going to have the best opportunities there. And the number of people applying is not as important as the quality of the potential fit.
Thank you all. We have a number of questions coming in, so I'm going to try to move through these quickly. How do professional references usually work with the head of school search? Is it same or different than other positions?
Yeah, I'd be happy to take that, and others please join in. Yes, for professional references for a head of school search, if you have worked closely with board members, with governing bodies, with founders, please list them as a reference, because they will be the best testimonial for you in terms of headship consideration. Are other references important? For example, the head of school with whom you've worked, other professional colleagues, or people with networks or organizations that are held in high regard? Yes, those are important, but develop those networks, develop those relationships with your board members, because a board member on a search committee is going to want to talk directly to a board member with whom you have worked. They hold credibility with one another.
Anyone else want to add anything? Should I move on?
I would just quickly say that just agreeing with Deb, but following on that, the other thing that I think most search committees are going to be looking for is feedback from your immediate supervisor. So the head of school in particular is very important.
Thank you all. I think we have time for just one or two more questions, and the rest of these maybe we can follow up with folks individually after the webinar is over. I'll get into one more. Studies reveal that 31% of heads were female and 5% were people of color, both male and female. How do you encourage women of color to continue to pursue headship when numbers have not changed over the past 7 years?
Mm-hmm. Anyone want to take that?
I think you. I'll take a stab at that. Thank you for the question. We appreciate it. I think the word in this question says it all. Is this idea of encouragement? We often need to see, progress to feel that we should make choices. But I think here we kind of talk a little bit about Gandhi, where he says, "Be the change you want to see." And so we continue to encourage leaders who might be hesitant, who might be less confident, who might feel less competent. It's not only about that, it's about the voice and the empowerment. So what we would say to you is that we support all kinds of women and people of color and all criteria, and that we will continue to encourage one by one person by one, and we encourage you to think about it as showing that courage and bravery, because we want to be part of that process as well. So we don't have an answer, but we would just want to say that every person and every applicant counts. So thank you.
No. And, you know, sometimes I think people think that as Carney Sandoe consultants, or really any search consultants, our time with you is going to be very limited. And, you know, we will be talking to you quickly. We have busy schedules. All of that is true. We do have busy schedules, but you would be amazed how much time you can get with us to kind of, you know, in a sense, explain the search process, provide tips, provide strategies. We will absolutely willingly coach pro bono because we want to see you succeed.
Do we have time for one more? Okay. What is the typical recruiting and hiring process from a search committee? What can somebody expect as a new head of school aspiring to be a head of school? What can they expect in terms of that search and how many steps there are, et cetera, et cetera?
John, do you want to take that and talk about, you've got a lot of experience.
I was looking at you, John, too. So.
I don't know. I had about 5 different reactions to the question all at the same time. Julie, read it again, would you please?
Here, 1 second. What is the typical recruiting and hiring process of a search committee? So as somebody who's never gone through it before, who's an aspiring head, what can they expect in terms of number of steps and things like that?
Okay. I'm going to also ask Theodora to chime in, who has chaired a search committee and can speak to it from that end. The typical steps, though, the search will begin with a general announcement. And you need to, going back to what I said before, you need to assess whether or not this is something which is potentially interesting to you. If it is, the best thing to do first is to follow up with the consultant or consultants who are involved with doing the search, because we are going to be the ones who are your first point of contact. And we initially are the voice of the school, effectively, in working with you to decide whether or not this is something you want to pursue. Following that, and assuming that it is, different schools require different sort of basic pieces of information about you, but typically they're going to be a cover letter, a resume. Many people ask for a statement of educational and or leadership philosophy. And in our case, we ask for a list of professional references. We do not want open letters. They don't help us, to be honest with you. And assuming that this feels like a fit and we think you should move forward in it, you're going to be invited to an interview with one of us. In our case, it's not true for all firms, but we would include notes on the interview as part of the dossier we present to a school. The school's search committee typically will review the dossiers, will identify a group of people they feel they would like to get to know better, and will reach out to you to set up an interview. And this is, again, what we would call a semifinalist interview. And that goes over a period. Usually speaking, we encourage schools to do their semifinalist interviews quite close together and to have a very clear sense of their timing for moving from semifinalist to finalist. If you're a finalist, you'll be invited to the school, usually 3, sometimes 4, rarely 2, and go through that end of the process, and the choice is eventually made. The other thing I would just emphasize to everybody is that if you receive, as opposed to sort of a network email, which most firms will send about their searches, if you receive a personalized letter from a consultant saying, hey, we think this is something you ought to look at pretty carefully, by all means follow up, because that wasn't done in the abstract. That's done because somebody feels that you really are somebody who might be good for that. So Theodore, do you want to come at it from the school point of view?
Yeah, I think a couple of things to add to what you're saying, John, and it's all very helpful. Search committees are not all created equal, so it's hard to know in all cases what to expect. Sometimes you will meet a search committee that's comprised of only trustees, board members, and some of them may have done this before. Some of them may be completely new to the process. And for them, as for you, it will be very important that you educate them on who you are, on why you're compelling, and on why they should select you, because this may be the first time they're actually talking to a head candidate. This might be the first time they think about hiring an international head of school. So think of the search committee as people who have busy day jobs. They are not professional headhunters or consultants or researchers, and so you want to put your best foot forward by helping them understand the best about you. Sometimes search committees will have administrators, so you may be speaking with people you will either replace or may work with. So think about it that way as well. Think about people who will be your potential colleagues and what might be valuable to them to hear about you. Sometimes search committees may include a parent. So I would say the most valuable thing you can do in your own preparation is to think about who the people are and to do a little bit of research on who you will be speaking with so that you address your audience appropriately. And don't forget that these are individuals who are just giving up their day jobs to speak with you. So just be your best self, be your friendly self as you normally would. And don't forget that, these are all humans.
Just very quick follow on that. And I agree with you, Theodore. Thanks. You've done enough interviews, I think all of you, to have an idea of what makes a good interview and what isn't a good interview. But to me, always the best interview is a conversation. And the degree to which that you are able to set that tone from your perspective as the suitor, so to speak, will be remarkably helpful to you. So I don't know, I could go on and on that one, but that's enough for the moment.
Thank you. As we draw our webinar to a close, please know that we are here to help, and we know that you can do it. So the team that's on the screen is here to support you and to encourage you and to provide further information and to answer your questions. So know, first of all, that the slides will be provided to you. And secondly, we will address the questions via email that we were unable to get to today. But to thank you for coming and to know that we will be back 2 weeks from today with a webinar, The Secret Sauce of a Great Search Committee. So if your school is thinking about at some point in the future a search committee for a headship or a senior leader, we want to address our next topic to those people. So please pass the information on, perhaps to board members, to senior leaders who might not have been here, because we'll talk about that secret sauce that makes for a good search committee. Thank you for your time, and we appreciate and welcome your further involvement with us. Bye-bye.